So hello everyone, my name's Katie Clubb. I work in community climate action in the climate team at the Forest of Dean District Council. And today I'm going to share some insights from participating in Our Earth Week, which is a global initiative run by the Community Radio Environment Network. And this year was between the 10th and the 15th of November. And the theme was all around water. There were 80 participating radio stations worldwide spotlighting issues like river health, flooding, ocean life. And we heard from loads of local voices, from campaigners to youth groups who all joined the conversation on conservation and climate action. And I'm going to talk about why this proved to be a really effective method of communication and just talk about some of the projects that were involved in that week and how it really helped to spotlight some of the projects across the Forest of Dean, of which I learnt there was so much going on around water, from improving rivers and watercourses, natural flood management, helping to restore natural functions and support wildlife, water quality and flood resilience. So it's such a big topic that the more I dug into it, the more I realised, wow, there's actually so much happening that I wasn't even aware of, and really learned how much this topic meant to people as well, and that really is a unifying topic across all of our residents. And brings together, fishermen, people who like to swim in the rivers, people are concerned about oceans, and it really is a unifying issue more than any other issue I've dealt with in the kind of climate team at the council. So it was really exciting to be able to work on this and have a specific week that really captivated and catalyzed all of that action, and was a chance to share so much information and get lots more engagement with some of these projects. So water, as I'm sure you're all aware, it really is the lifeblood of this planet. And I'll quickly start by introducing why I'm so passionate about water. And before that kind of came from my previous role, before this job, I was working in Japan, in Okinawa, with a charity called Churamura, which is a turtle conservation charity in the Yomitan Peninsula in Okinawa. And I was running summer camps for young people all around marine conservation. And it was there that I witnessed how marine environments are some of the most fragile ecosystems in the world. I was volunteering at a coral farm where we were trying to develop bleach-resistant coral and propagating it back into an area of desertified reef and trying to rebuild that. And I learned recently that we have passed the first planetary tipping point as set out in the Global Tipping Points report, which is around coral reefs. And this is a massive wake-up call. And yeah, I saw that firsthand, how rising sea temperatures are causing that bleaching of coral and the knock-on effects of the whole ecosystem, including the turtles, which we were specifically protecting and looking at that summer. So that really made me motivated to continue my work in climate action, and made me so passionate about how we can protect this environment. And I got this role at FODDC, and I've brought a lot of that passion into the role. So earlier on this year, I ran a Marine Climate Action Day for Huntley Primary School as part of the Eco Schools programme. And I was exploring how inland communities are so connected to ocean health still. It's not just those living right by the sea that have that connection and have that responsibility to oceans. We know that what happens in our inland communities and our rivers and how we protect that has such a massive impact on our ocean health. So local issues really do have a global impact. So on that day, I was running trash-free sea creature artwork and creative writing, posters, creating plastic pledges. And this really captured the imagination of those school children who were so excited. And at lunchtime, they all ran off to collect litter and tell me about what they'd picked up and tell me about how much they loved the interactions they'd had with water in their lifetime, whether that be snorkeling or swimming in local rivers and their favourite sea creature animals as well. So it really showed that this is such a unifying kind of issue, especially for young people who get this more than a lot of older generation that I've spoke to. I had the opportunity to go to the Blue Earth Summit in October as part of the work around the Our Earth Week, and here I spoke to some incredible people. If you don't know, the Blue Earth Summit is a global 3-day gathering that unites entrepreneurs, investors, and change makers to accelerate regenerative, climate positive solutions. And it was just incredible there to see how much action is taking place. And that gave me so much hope, despite those grim predictions that came out that morning about the first tipping point being reached around coral reefs. I learned there how important oceans are. So they cover 70% of the planet. They're a carbon sink, a flood defense, a food source for billions of people, a recreation space, home to most life on Earth, and the source of every second breath we take. So if that's not enough of a reason to kind of get behind work and support around oceans and water, then I don't know what is. On that day, I was collecting voice clips for my Our Earth Week radio show takeover of the local Dean radio station. And I managed to speak to Chris Packham after his talk, which was so inspiring. And he gave me such a perfect little quote that really just gave me goosebumps. So he said in his voice message to me around Our Earth Week that we're doing untold damage to our one and only home, and we have to rectify that. That sounds like a massive issue. And when you tell many people, they think, well, what can I possibly do? I'm just a drop in the ocean. But you're not just a drop in the ocean, because what is an ocean but a multitude of drops? We can all make a positive difference. So that really stuck with me, is that you hear that phrase being used in a real negative context of, oh, I'm just a drop in the ocean. But it's so true. An ocean comes from a collection of drops, which creates a puddle, which then runs into a stream, which runs into a river, which then runs into an ocean. So, and that ocean of change is what we really need. So we need every single person to be that drop in an ocean and create a positive difference. So that was one of my biggest takeaways, and really that we all have such an impact to make. And that was something fantastic to see around Our Earth Week, is just all of these people that are making such a change. So we heard from national and global campaigners for water there, but I also was able to collect lots of voice messages from local advocates and local projects that are going on in the Forest of Dean as well, which I was able to share through Our Earth Week. And one of these was a project from Queering the Why. So earlier on in the year, I was involved with a project with the LGBTQIA plus community, and we created a community climate action plan. And one of the actions that came out of that was a project around water and well-being. And I was able to record a clip of Sian, who was the founder of Queer Swims, who talks about how how access to clean, safe, and inclusive blue spaces really supports mental health and belonging, and how important that is for our sense of well-being. And that's something I've experienced myself. I'm an avid wild swimmer. It's something that brings me more kind of calm and perspective, I think, than anything else. That kind of submersion in cold water and being outdoors, being really like submerged in a nature environment. So it was so wonderful to see that was a project that came out of that project, of that whole initiative. Then we also heard from campaigners from Save the Why. Rachel Bomford spoke so beautifully about her connection to the River Wye and why it's so important to her. My co-host on Dean Radio, from Dean Radio, Jane, did an interview with Lee Day solicitors, who are the solicitors taking Welsh Water and Avara Foods to court over the river pollution around the River Wye. So that was really interesting to hear their perspective and why that's happening and what's led to it. We also were able to talk about ways that local people can get involved in citizen science projects and the opportunities that there are there. So Friends of the River Wye have lots of opportunities to get involved in water quality testing, and they've got a list of ways that you can get involved in other water projects on the Rivers Trust as well. One way that you can get involved is as a runoff reporter. So we know that soil runoffs from fields into roads and rivers is a major form of pollution. And according to recent figures, runoff contributes to over 80% of pollution in the River Wye. So observations around where runoff is taking place is a massive way that local people can engage in little micro volunteering opportunities to get connected and feel an engagement and feel like they're able to do something about this. We know that the best way to combat climate anxiety is through action. So if there's lots of these ways that we can point people to get involved in making a difference, it also really supports their own feeling of purpose and of being able to do something and not just feeling stuck in kind of a fear and a response that they don't have any control in the situation. I've also got involved in my local water quality testing initiatives with Common River Bathers. So they created an amazing film. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it, Rave On for the Avon. And one of my friends, Mrs. Meg Avon, who married the river, also provided a fantastic voice message clip around why she did that and how using art and a completely different advocacy was such an effective way of getting people engaged in river conservation. So I've been involved with testing the River Avon, which is a project funded by Surfers Against Sewage, and has been amazing to see just how that river again draws so many different groups together and really is just an epicenter of the community and means so much to people in different ways. We also looked at, during our Earth Week, water conservation and worked with different youth groups on what communities and individuals can do around water conservation. So I went to 03Dec25 Youth Clubb and spoke to them and got them to talk about what they'd learned from a Seven Rivers Trust workshop around saving water and slowing water down, and what that meant to them. And they also provided some really beautiful thoughts around water pollution and ideas of how people can save water as well. We also learnt around the work that Suntory, who are one of our biggest employers and one of the biggest users of water in the district, what they're doing to conserve water. And they talked about their new internal campaign around Every Drop Counts. And we learned that they have 2 boreholes on site to not put pressure on local water usage, but they also have got some big goals of reducing their water usage. So that's really great to see how, one of the biggest kind of players, biggest employers and most significant kind of users of water are really thinking about their water usage too. We also did some digging around what we're doing as a council, and I put out a newsletter on the same theme around water and shared around an initiative of rainwater harvesting in the toilet blocks. So the 3 different toilet blocks in 3 of our towns have been, they've had water harvesting tanks added as part of improvement works. And this is all around working towards resilience in terms of future use. And we know that that's not going to be hugely impactful, but it's a start. I'm really thinking about, whenever we do improvement works on facilities, how can we make positive improvements to those in terms of climate and water, and really think about that in every kind of decision-making process. I also did some reflection on how one of our biggest engagement pieces of work really highlighted water as being an issue that residents really care about. So over the summer, we ran a citizen visioning project with a organisation called Involve, who are climate engagement specialists. And using the process of sortition, we got a representative sample of 19 participants who came up with a vision, a future vision for Colford, for their town, and came up with 9 recommendations independently, having listened to experts talking about different climate issues, and then they formed their own ideas of what they'd like to see happen in the future. And it was really encouraging to see that water management was one of their top priorities. And this was around flood risk, but also about drought and conserving water. So they are keen to see water butts provided, to see more education around efficient use of water, and also to see less leaks from the water companies. So again, really interesting to see that this is something that our residents really care about, and that backs up some of the work that we're doing to focus on water as an issue in the district. Flood preparedness and nature-based solutions are incredibly important to people. This time last year, we saw some terrible flooding in Lydney, which affected many hundreds of people and businesses, some of which still haven't managed to reopen after devastating floods from almost a year ago. We also saw flooding in Monmouth just a couple of weeks ago after a major incident was declared following Storm Claudia. And that caused the River Monnow to reach record levels, submerging homes and businesses. And I saw some of our local campaigners involved in Save the Wye live streaming this disaster on social media in the middle of the night. And it really made my brain go to a viral tweet that was circling earlier this year, which came out off the back of the Los Angeles wildfires, and that was that climate change will manifest itself as a series of disasters viewed through phones with footage that gets closer and closer to home until you are the one filming it. And when I was watching this happening on a Saturday morning on social media, someone I know recording their high street that was completely underwater, cars floating downstream, someone trapped in an alleyway, it really felt like that the climate crisis has reached our doorstep now in the form of flooding. We're seeing how hundreds of people have already lost their lives in Indonesia. It's not just an issue that's happening on the other side of the world, it is happening here and now in our communities. And so this is why I think flooding is really kind of top of people's mind in terms of issues that we need to focus on. So preparing for heavy rainfall and flooding, and as part of climate adaptation and resilience planning. So we have done a lot of work around this in the last year. I ran a climate adaptation workshop for town and parish councils, and we launched a town and parish council climate adaptation fund, which has just recently closed, and we had 5 applications, and one of them was around tackling flooding in the town centre. So we're really looking and trying to educate and upskill our town and parish councillors to understand how this is such a pressing issue, and to understand what they can do, where to look for funding, and also inspire them with some amazing projects that are out there that they can kind of take advantage of and copy. There's a great project that took place in Cinderford that was work done by the Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust to put in local SUDs, so sustainable urban drainage systems. And there's a beautiful mural that's outside where these SUDs are, and I went to visit them and did some kind of journalism, I guess, around those SUDs as part of our Earth Week. And if you haven't looked into SUDs before, it's really interesting. There's kind of guttering that's attached to a building that then drains into a series of like planters, which have different layers of materials that slow down water and absorb it. So some kind of small, really aerated like rock materials, and then different layers of sand and soil, and then your plants on top to create a bit of like a wetland garden. And they look really effective and part of greening and beautifying areas. So look to how we can bring in more initiatives like that to slow down water, and then look at kind of things like depaving initiatives to again slow water down from reaching storm drains. So there's lots and lots of schemes that you can look into and try and fund. So we're looking at how we can support work like that going forwards, and both adapt to future climate impacts at the same time as doing work around mitigation, because we know that both of those now have to be done at the same time. So as well as those kind of solutions, there's nature-based solutions that are taking place. I was really lucky enough to go to the Knepp rewilding estate and talk to their chief ecologist, Matthew Phelps, about what Knepp are doing around water. If you haven't heard of Knepp, you must check out the film and book called Wilding. It's a flagship project around rewilding in the UK, where a 4,000 acre dairy farm was rewilded into and given back to nature, and it's just a fantastic project. And they're doing so much around water on site, so like rewiggling streams and watercourses, and they've got a beaver project there, which is awesome. And so they're just waiting on a license from Natural England before they're able to release their beavers, of which they have now 6, I believe, in an enclosure. And there's already evidence of how much benefit they've had, and they can create millions of pounds worth of flood kind of defences in an incredibly short space of time, in a matter of weeks, what in terms of comparatively what have cost millions of pounds over years. So they really are like the kind of peak king of natural kind of flood management. And we also know there is a beaver project taking place in the Forest of Dean as well, which is really exciting. So since learning about what's happening in Knepp, I've looked into what's going on in the Forest of Dean more as well, and learned that beavers are ecosystem engineers, and they work to slow down the flow of water using their dams during heavy rainfall, and then they release it slowly during the dry periods, so it reduces ecological impacts of drought. They also create larger areas of wetlands, and one of the things that the ecologist told me was that if you want to increase biodiversity, just add water. It's the most effective, quickest way to increase biodiversity. So that applies to your garden as well, or an area of green space at your workplace. I did the same in my garden after I learned this. I just added, I've got a very small garden, but dug into the ground a bucket, kind of just this big kind of thing. And immediately I found some pondweed from another local pond that I put in it, and just seeing how much life there is. If you just study it for 5 minutes, you'll see there's hundreds of different little, couldn't even tell you what, creatures and forms of life, and frogs and stuff that get drawn to that. So that's something to take away. It doesn't matter how big it is, but just adding water is such a key way to increase biodiversity. So here in the Forest of Dean, Forestry England and Natural England are working together with experts at the Beaver Trust to introduce beavers within enclosures. They've been monitoring changes that take place as a result of the beavers' work, changes to biodiversity, habitats, water quality and flow rates. And then they'll be looking, there's studies being done about where they might try and introduce them in the future. And if you do want to come and visit the Forest of Dean, if you're in the area and you want to try and take a look at them, the enclosure is just off a popular walking route called Spruce Ride and near the Colliers Cycle Trail. And winter is a very good time to try and see them, because like leaves have all fallen off the trees, so you can sneak a peek at them a bit easier. So yeah, do come and see if you can get a glimpse of them, and you can see some of the habitat changes in the enclosure that they've already contributed to. So really, really interesting and really cool to see that these reintroduction projects are happening all over the country now, because institutions can see the value of beavers and just how much they can benefit our wildlife, our biodiversity, but also our towns and cities as a result by reducing flood impacts. So yeah, power to the beavers. So that's just a kind of whistle stop tour of all of the projects that I've kind of highlighted as part of our Earth Week that are taking place across the Forest of Dean. But I want to leave you with the thought that water really does connect us all. It's a thread linking life, community, and climate. And there's so many ways that we can take action around water. So I'm sure in lots of the work that you're doing is around water, but in your individual lives, or you can build ponds and mini wetlands, as I mentioned, harvest rainwater, reduce home water usage, reduce fish consumption, reduce single-use plastics, join boycotts of things like non-biodegradable wet wipes, support river cleanups in your community, and getting involved in monitoring groups, and simply sharing the work of other groups and individuals across the country and across the world. So there really is so much you can do. And if you ever hear people saying, what can I do? I'm just one person, I don't know where to start, really try and list off some of those ways, because everyone has such a potential to create such a positive impact. And we all have responsibility for acting on climate to protect our environment, but also ourselves and people, planet. So I hope that's been interesting. If you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. I've also got an incredibly large resource library of all of these voice messages that I've collected from national, global, and local campaigners and advocates. So if you do want access to those, I might have to try and just get permissions first, but I'm sure everyone will be happy to for me to share that, and then you can use them if you're doing your own talks or engagement work around water. We can help spread the word and make sure that we all think about water, not just in these weeks like our Earth Week, but it's something that we think about throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Wow. Well done, Katie. That was probably the only time I've gone through 1,000 topics in one half-hour period. So to reassure everybody, we are recording this, and Zoom will break down everything you've said into a list of items and clues and links, and we'll try and work with you to get people's questions answered, because I'm sure there are going to be plenty of them. But thank you so much for that. It was really reassuring to hear what people are up to. I would draw your attention to a couple of questions in the chat if you've not seen them yet, and also Stuart is first off the mark to ask you a question. So let's give it to Stuart, please.
Mm.
Hi, I'd just like to say thanks very much. As Graham said, you covered a hell of a lot of topics there, what relates to water, and I quite agree with you. I've now done a water literacy course, which
Oh,
I didn't know existed before I did it.
with
It's similar to the carbon literacy,
yeah,
but one of the main things they teach you is water conservation, how much we waste water,
yeah,
and how much embedded water there is in everything we buy.
yes,
I'd just like to make one comment, and that was on your list of things the ocean does for us.
yeah.
You didn't say it acts as a thermal buffer and has in
Ooh,
fact absorbed over half of the excess heating which has
yeah.
been induced by climate change.
Wow, yeah. That's
And
great.
also like to ask you about there was quite a big bit in the Guardian either yesterday or the day before about how we are actually going to run out of fresh water.
Yeah.
2030 seems to be um, a point that we're getting towards where we're going to be something like 50 billion litres a day short of
Wow.
water. Some enormous amounts. Anyway, thank you very much. That was great. And as
That's
somebody put in the chat, would you be able to circulate your newsletters?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to, especially the last one, which was on water and has lots of information, and also has the link to the radio show that I did. If you want to listen back to that, and it has some of those voice clips in it. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll send that. Maybe I'll send that to Graham along with
Yeah, we'll
some
put it in the knowledge base so everyone will be
resources.
able to pick it up.
Yeah,
Great.
perfect. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
You've got plenty of questions in the chat, Katie, about how can people see the beavers and follow up on some
Ooh,
of the links that you suggested.
yes, yeah. I don't know about dominant soil type, I'm afraid. I'm definitely not an expert in that. In the upper Parrot runoff, countries very little unless you classified legacy. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but I know that we had a an event recently that was called Water in Our Forest, and we had Forestry England and the Environment Agency talking there, and they talked a lot about the geology of the Forest of Dean and how that contributes to things like runoff and issues around water. So there's people that I could ask that question of if you're interested. I'll make a note of that. But yeah, not an expert on, well, not an expert on any of this really, just someone that's very passionate. The only thing I'm really an expert on is turtles, but um I yeah, I'm very much a generalist and an enthusiastic supporter and a connector of everyone together, I think. Location of the beavers, I'll put that in the chat. Yeah, so that's just off the Collier's bike trail. There's a link here that you can find them. And then, yeah, newsletter, I will get the link for Water Industry National Environment Programme. Oh, that's cool. Learning
Yeah,
where,
it's a great tip, that one.
looking for collaboration. Oh, that's fabulous. And would the water literacy training sounds really interesting. Councillor Stuart, would you be able to put a link to that at all? Because that'd be really great to share with our councillors.
So, Stuart, do you happen to have that data available? I'm busy investigating already. You're on mute, Stuart.
I don't have a link at the moment, but I'll see if I can find it. But I think
Yeah.
it was organised by Groundwork East and
Oh,
partly
really?
funded by, I've got a feeling it's Northumberland Water.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Awesome. And Colford System Visioning, Sandra. Yeah. What would you like to know more about that?
Yeah, I
I've got.
just didn't. Sorry,
Oh no, go on. Sorry.
I just didn't quite catch. A, I was wondering if the council had funded it,
Mm.
and B, I think you said bowls that you so that you brought. I'm just interested in the practicalities of how it happened, and then how you selected all the how it was
Yeah.
self-selecting the people that came.
Yeah. So it was funded through Innovate UK. So it wasn't directly funded by the council. Yeah, it was Innovate UK funding through the Fast Followers program. If you're aware of that.
Mm.
So it, and then we worked with Involve, who are climate engagement specialists, and they did the think tank around the big piece of work across the country around getting people's thoughts around climate, and they did a big, like the YouTube, well, there was a TV show that aired around it. They're amazing, really, really. If anyone has the opportunity to work with Involved, they're fabulous. And then with Involved, they partner with the Sortition Foundation, who do that, getting a representative like citizens jury. So to do that, they took all of that in house, and they sent out letters to every single person in the town, inviting them to apply. And then in a questionnaire, they had to complete a questionnaire which included their kind of socioeconomic background, their thoughts around climate change, their civic engagement, their age, their whereabouts they lived, all of that data. And then that was they did something clever with that, and then basically looked at the representation of Colford as a place, and then basically got a representative sample of people that represented the makeup of Colford, but that was kind of equal spread of like men and women, and like, you know, all of those different factors that we looked at in the questionnaire were represented. So it wasn't the idea of that, and which is, I think, one of the biggest successes of that project, that it wasn't just the usual suspects. So it was really working with people that had never been involved in any climate work before. But the advantage was that they were paid for their time, and that's
the participants were paid.
Participants were paid for their time and their expenses, childcare, travel, everything, and they were fed and everything. So that's, I think, was how we were able to get such a representative view and reach people that hadn't been involved before. And then we also didn't put climate at the center of the question. We had a bit of a Trojan horse. So the question they were asked was around, how do we create a fair and happy Colford whilst responding to the challenges of climate change? So it was happiness and fairness was the thing that we focused on. And then responding to climate change was like how we did it. So really bringing in that kind of co-benefits piece to climate action, which we've adopted as our way of working around climate in the Forest of Dean, because it is an area that has a lot of indices of multiple deprivation. There's a lot of reasons why people can't kind of have climate as top of their priority list, because they've got to focus on, you know, putting food on the table and paying the bills, and really struggling with cost of living crises and mental health and well-being. And so really not focusing on climate at the forefront has been really beneficial, and actually bringing nature and climate together, and water is involved in that, because nature and water and all those things are so much less politicized, unfortunately, now than climate is. It's meant that we've got a lot more engagement, and people are a lot more able to see how it affects them, and how it's a local issue rather than an abstract kind of global issue of, you know, a polar bear being sad because its ice caps melting. So it really is, it is close to home. It's like people are able to actually really engage with it. So it was a really fantastic project, actually.
That sounds amazing in terms of community engagement, because that's kind of what we really struggle with still. And could you just say the name of the people who did the data together?
They're called the Sortition Foundation, and then Involved. Sortition Foundation. I can send you I can send everyone the final report if you're interested. That talks about the process, talks about how it happened, and the recommendations. I'm more than happy to kind of give more information. The only thing is, on the other positive a bit, is that we got the town and the district council to agree to act on the recommendations that come out of it before. So not to agree to take everything forwards and promise that they can do everything, but at least agree to acknowledge, and where they can't do something, say why, and signpost to different people, but to respond. So they acknowledge that they have to respond within 3 months of getting the report. So that's really helped to embed it, and actually it not just being a kind of talking shop, and like actually embed what comes out of it into our council plans and policies and action for the future. So I've learned a lot from that piece in terms of what effective engagement looks like and how to really embed what comes out of it in future projects. The only thing is now it's almost set a precedent that people get paid for involvement, and I think people should get paid because they put a lot of time and an effort into it. And it's really made me think, how do we remunerate people who get involved in climate and share their thoughts? Because we do ask a lot of people, and they really need to be supported in order to get a representative sample. Otherwise you do just get the same people involved who are really passionate. So yeah, there's lots of learning from that project. I could talk to you more about it in future if you like, but
thank you, that's really helpful.
no problem.
Can we move on to Sue Burton, please?
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Katie. Just a aside, really, you mentioned about making sure that wipes were recyclable.
Yes.
I wasn't keen on that because I think all wipes, they should be made of recyclable material, but they are contaminated and they need to go in the bin. And I don't really think there's an emphasis on whether it is or isn't recyclable because it's no good.
Yes, just to clarify, I don't mean recycling wet wipes, not at all. No, it's about biodegradable, not recyclable.
Does it matter? Sorry, does it matter if they're not biodegradable, if they are going to go in the waste stream, which mainly is incinerated?
It does, it does matter, especially for water, especially for getting clogged in pipes. And so there's a really interesting piece of work, and one of the voice clips I did at the Blue Earth Summit with an organisation called Thames21, and they are leading the campaign around making non-biodegradable wet wipes illegal and banning them, and they've got some fantastic data to back up why, and just how many non-biodegradable wet wipes are washed up on beaches and clogging up rivers and spreading into millions of microplastics because of what they're made of. So it's a very easy small switch that we can make. They shouldn't be flushed down the toilet anyway, but unfortunately they are, and that's a way that we can reduce the impact there. But I can send you the work that Thames21 are doing around it, and that will provide some good
Thank you
info.
for explaining that. That's really makes sense now. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who has a question for Katie, please?
Can I just add to the wet wipes real quick? Because I've just started to roll with Thames Water and discovered that we spend about 20 million pounds unclogging pipes that are impacted mainly as a result of wet wipes being flushed down the toilet. So even the biodegradable, flushable ones are not, and will continue to add to the problem. But I think one of my colleagues pointed out that their granddaughter was having wet wipes, flushable wet wipes used, and the mother was saying it's really great because you can flush them down the toilet, but it says on the packaging that you flush one wet wipe per toilet flush. So if you think about the water usage involved in that, if you use 3 to wipe a baby's bottom, that's 3 toilet flushes that you've just engaged. I think the real question is, why do we need to use them? And we don't. use toilet paper and, flush that down the toilet. Because nothing other than poo, pee, and paper and puke should ever go down the toilet. And what could we do with that 20 million pounds if we weren't using it to unplug toilets? We could be using that for river restoration and all of that. So we really need to engage the public. I think, especially for Thames Water, there's a lot of backlash and, negative media, but actually it comes down to, and I, this is also coming from me as a former, community outreach officer for the Even Load Catchment Partnership. We flush those toilets. We pour stuff down our drains. We pour down meat, grease, and all sorts that adds to these blockages. And if we actually were more aware of our impact individually, then we could make a huge difference on the water quality overall. So that's why I was really interested in knowing more about the water literacy, because obviously from Thames Water point of view, we can't go out there and say to people, oh, it's your fault, because there is a responsibility within Thames to upgrade their systems and all that, but it needs to really, really join up, and we all have to share that responsibility. So yeah, I'm really interested in that water literacy course.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yeah, said perfectly. That was great.
Any other points that people haven't managed to raise yet, please? Okay, well, no one's waving or shouting at me that I can see. So, Katie, thank you yet again for a most reassuring document. It's lovely to hear how many people around the world are taking part in doing something to restore the planet to health. It's very uplifting. So, thank you very much indeed. That was wonderful, and we're all grateful to you. Next week, we are doing a further on discussion, if you will, on Rural Flood Resilience Partnership. So Paul Dixon from ACO is going to come and talk about a lot of the subjects that we talked about today, what you can do about them to make the country more resilient to the needs for water. So do please join us again this time next week. And in the meantime, thank you all so much. And Katie, thank you very much indeed. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Katie. Bye.
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 Bye.